19 new skills are coming hot off the press in 3.15 Expedition League. So today we're going to be taking a good look at some synergies, some quick theory crafts, and an overall first impression of these gems. I have never been so excited as a player and yet so scared as a content creator. Welcome, it's your friendly neighborhood Badger here, and I'm back to talk about the 19 new gems coming in 3.15 Expedition League. This is extremely exciting to be getting so many new gems, a bunch of active gems and some support gems as well. And today we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into these gems. Now, we're not going specifically so hard into each individual gem, but I will be talking about all of them and general first impressions. If you want to see some more in-depth of each individual gem, I'm hopefully going to be releasing a video on each of the gems. I know that's 19 videos, but kind of quick videos over the next few days coming up to 3.15. And we're going to be talking about all of that. So hit that sub button down below if you're interested in those sorts of things. But today we're going to be talking about the kind of meta shakeup that this is going to be bringing to the game. And then in future videos, we'll be talking about the more hard-hitting subjects like all of the nerfs that may be coming and the general increase in difficulty in the game. But let's get right into it. Now, I'm going to be putting basically a small little video on the side of the gems when I talk about them and what's actually going to be coming here. But alongside Expedition, we are revitalizing Path of Exile's build metagame by both introducing many new playstyles and augmenting existing builds with powerful new tools. We've created 19 new skill and support gems that are designed around the themes of each Ascendancy class. So first of all, we're going to start with Ascendant, Spectral Helix. Now, Spectral Helix throws out a spectral copy of your weapon which spirals outwards from you. Now, it's what they've wanted. Chris said in the video, it's what they wanted the Vaal Spectral Throw to actually be, but it didn't really turn out that well. It'll be interesting to see if Vaal Spectral Throw even stays in the game, but Spectral Helix is, I would say, just going to be way better than what Vaal Spectral Throw is, and just normal Spectral Throw anyway. It throws a projectile, as I said, a copy of your melee weapon that spirals around you and starts to hit enemies on an outward spiral. Now, a really interesting thing here is it does bounce off terrain. Any sort of terrain that this spectral projectile hits, comes around, it'll hit the terrain and then start bouncing back in the opposite direction. Now, there's going to be some really interesting things here to see if shotgunning does happen with all of this. But anyway, that's all that I really have to say. Tags themselves are attack and projectile, like Spectral Throw itself. Moving on, strength in combat. Inspired by the Marauder's Juggernaut, Berserker, and Chieftain. So being 19 gems, there's 19 ascendancies, right? Well, there's basically one for each. Bone Shatter and Rage Vortex and Earthbreaker support gem. So let's go over these ones here. Bone Shatter is inspired by Juggernaut, and Bone Shatter gives you physical damage when you hit enemies. It's got a massive kind of stun and area effect increase as you keep hitting enemies up to 400%, but you do gain 1 trauma stack the first time this attack hits an enemy. So these trauma stacks mean that you take physical damage per trauma when you gain trauma. And the trauma does last 6 seconds. Now, Chris did mention in the Q&A that it's going to be very difficult to reach the upper limit of trauma, but this is something that you're really going to want to have a ton of physical damage mitigation. But it's going to mean that you get a ton of stun duration and area of effect if you do increase this up, which is really, really, really nice. Now, Rage Vortex is inspired by Berserker, and it consumes some rage or sacrifices rage to create a rage storm if you have at least 10 rage, and it deals 5% more damage per 1 rage sacrificed and has a +1 to radius per 2 rage sacrifice. So I assume that this is going to be extremely strong with Berserker. I can see some very, very, very strong builds coming out of this one right here. And Rage Storm hits 250% more frequently. I don't know exactly what that really means there, the more frequently, because it doesn't say anything against it, but it requires, what does it actually require to hit? A sword or an axe you do need to be able to hit with Rage Vortex. It's going to be very interesting to see how this functions with the Savior Sword, because it does say a maximum of 1 Rage Storm. And lastly, Earthbreaker support. Now, Earthbreaker is something that I've wanted in the game for a very long time, basically taking totems, but instead of just using, say, Ancestral Protector, Ancestral War Chief to deal attack damage with your totems, you can pretty much use any skill, any area effect melee skill, or any just melee skill, I think it is, right? No, slam skills. Any slam skill can be used with Earthbreaker support. So things like Earthquake, you can now use on totems. You can use Earth Shatter. I think that's going to be way too strong using Earth Shatter in your totems. There's going to be a bunch of really interesting things going on here. But let's move on. Let's move on to the champion, right? Duelist Champion, Gladiator and Slayer Ascendancy classes created Defiance Banner, Shield Crush, and Behead support gem. So we've got Defiance Banner, which is a new banner inspired by Champion. Now this means that enemies near you have reduced critical strike chance, and nearby allies have increased evasion rating and armor. So it's a defensive banner right here. When you place the banner down, you just get extra aura of effect and when placed, you get increased area of effect and aura effect, I should say, like a normal banner. And when you place the banner down, it taunts enemies, and they deal 15% less damage when you place that banner. So this banner could be really, really nice in a support setup, on any sort of support ascendancy, really. It's also really nice in Champion. I can see this being used to mitigate what I would potentially say are going to be Fortify nerfs coming. Now, moving on to Shield Crush. Now, this is a Gladiator-inspired skill, and it's just another thing to supplement your shield charge and spectral shield throw. Not too much to say here other than it's kind of like a shotgunning shield bash. So it does shotgun, as they say. It can be hit by 2 of the waves where they overlap. So you can't shotgun with all 3 waves, but you can hit with 2. Now, there's no projectile modifier here, so you can't add extra waves. It's just attack, AoE, and melee. I think there's going to be a sweet spot of the type of AoE that you're going to be wanting from this skill to be able to clear fairly well, but then still always shotgun with the skill. And Behead support. Now, Behead support is basically mini Headhunter, which is really, really interesting. Basically, if you kill enemies with this skill supported by Behead, you grant one of their modifiers for 20 seconds. Now, there is a chance to refresh the duration of granted monster modifier by up to 5 seconds when you hit a rare or unique enemy. But Behead, I think stated by Chris, when you kill a new rare enemy, that buff gets refreshed. The buff gets taken over by the new buff. So there's no stacking of buffs. You can't get like 10, 15 buffs like you could in Inspired Learning or a Headhunter. It's going to be 1 buff at one time. But honestly, it's a pretty nice support to sit in there. And it does have a 30% more damage multiplier with hits against enemies on low life. So that's pretty nice right there. Moving on to the Ranger. So I've got Ranger's Raider, Pathfinder, and Deadeye Ascendancy classes. We've created Storm Rain, Explosive Concoction, and a Focus Ballista support gem. So first of all, let's talk about Storm Rain, which is the Deadeye-inspired skill right here. Storm Rain is kind of like your Toxic Rain, I would say, but instead of toxic pods going on the ground and dealing damage over time in that way, you've got arrows landing on the ground and then firing beams between those arrows to deal lightning damage every 0.5 seconds. There's a maximum of 100 arrows in the ground, and each arrow can fire 4 beams. I think this is going to be a really strong skill, honestly. I think I've heard a lot of people saying that this seems very underwhelming, but I think it's actually going to be very strong. I think with a lot of attack speed, and I think with less area of effect, because it does have the AoE tag, so less area of effect means that your arrows are going to be landing in a smaller area, means that all of those chains are going to be chaining and dealing a lot of damage. I think that this is really going to stack up, and you're going to be seeing some very strong damage coming out of this. Now, I don't think it's going to be as strong as pre-nerf Toxic Rain, because it doesn't scale very well off gem levels, because it is an attack primarily, and you're just going to be wanting to get as much flat damage as you can, and then converting the physical damage to lightning damage there as well. Moving on to Explosive Concoction. Explosive Concoction is going to be shaking up things with a very new skill, and I think Pathfinder is going to absolutely love this thing. However, I think it's going to be very clunky. Let me talk about what this is actually doing. Now, first of all, you do actually have to be unarmed. So this means you can wield a shield in your offhand, but your main hand does have to be unarmed to be able to throw this Explosive Concoction. Now, it can consume your charges from a ruby, sapphire, or topaz flask, and consumes 3 charges from 1 flask of each valid type if possible. It deals flat damage per sapphire or topaz flask of subsequent cold damage or lightning damage, but instead it actually doesn't deal flat damage with a ruby flask. It deals more ignite damage if charges were consumed from a ruby flask. So you can either go into, I would say, Sapphire, Topaz, using Trinity support. Explosive Concoction is going to be absolutely insane. And the Ignite version could be pretty good as well. But I think it's just being clunky in the way that you do have to specifically have that Sapphire or Topaz flask to really, buff this up. I think is going to be a little bit interesting there. So we'll have to see how that actually pans out. Lastly, Focus Ballista support. This is going to be disgusting in accuracy stacking Ballista builds, I really think. Ballista totems from supported skills only attack when you fire an attack projectile, and supported skills have a 40% increased totem placement speed, and they have 30% more attack speed. Now, this is really interesting. The 30% more attack speed on Focus Ballista means that they would be attacking faster, but it is going to be limited by how fast your character can attack as well. Now, this is going to be coupled really well because your ballistas are going to be able to focus what you're going to be focusing on, stacking up whatever you might be doing there. And on second thoughts, I did say it's going to be really powerful, but it could either be extremely powerful or extremely underwhelming. We will have to wait and see with this one right here. But I think accuracy stacking, something like tornado shot accuracy stacking, shotgunning, some crazy stuff going on with Focus Ballista support, I think could be pretty darn good, I reckon. Yeah. All right, we're going to be talking about the Shadow here. Those skills almost didn't show up, but they're here right now. Shadow, obviously we've got Assassin, Saboteur, and Trickster Ascendancy classes, and created Ambush, Blade Trap, and Voltaxic Burst. Now, Ambush. Firstly, Ambush is a blink skill, a movement skill that teleports you to a nearby enemy, applying a buff for you for a short duration and blinding the enemy for a secondary duration. Now, if you attack that enemy that you jumps to, you exert that attack. Exerted attacks have increased critical strike chance and 100% critical strike multiplier. Now, in a small look at this, that's pretty darn strong, I will say. However, there is a bit of a line here that says attacks exerted by this skill cannot be exerted by other skills, meaning that if you're wanting to couple a bunch of exerting stuff together, this is going to actually start to not work. Well, it won't work at all. You can't, use extra exertions through cries or anything like that or try to abuse that. I don't think that this skill is going to see much use. I see where they want to use this in the Assassin Ascendancy, but I really do not think that anyone's really going to be using this, unfortunately. However, there may be, so you guys might, you might come out with something super OP. Let me know. Let me know what you think about this skill. Next off, we have Blade Trap. I love the look of this. It's a trap, but it is a trap that does scale off your attacks, which is going to be really interesting. Now, it's been stated that it doesn't actually scale off your attack speed. It's independent from your attack speed, but things like accuracy, it will probably scale off things like that. So basically, you place a trap down, it rotates 4 times and deals and has increased rotation speed if you're dual wielding, and it rotates +1 times if you're dual wielding. And it uses your main hand weapon to deal damage. Now, this is going to be really interesting to see how powerful this actually becomes. I think it's really going to come down to how much scaling comes from the weapons themselves, how much damage you can get out of the tree, and how much increased mine and trap damage actually works on this one right here. We don't have a lot of tags themselves. We've only got trap, AoE, and attack. I think it's fairly enough to get a lot of damage out of this. Potentially with Saboteur, potentially with other skills. We'll have to, with other ascendancies, we'll have to see. And lastly, we've got Voltaxic Burst. Voltaxic Burst is an, kind of a lightning skill, kind of a chaos skill, inspired by Trickster, and it applies a buff to you for a short duration when you cast it, releasing a burst of lightning and chaos spell damage in an area around you when the buff ends. Enemies killed by the damage or shortly after will explode, so it's got inbuilt corpse max life explosion, which is not a chance. This is an explosion straight off the bat. This looks extremely strong, not on Trickster, as it may be inspired by, but extremely strong on Occultist, and converting the rest of that lightning damage to chaos damage with something like a Voltaxic Rift, going full into chaos damage, and just creating way too many explosions. And just, I think this is going to be a really nice speed clearing skill, because as we all know, explosions are the king. All right, let's move on. Power in Darkness. We're going to be looking at the Witch, the Occultist, Elementalist, and Necromancer Ascendancy. I'm very very hyped for one of these skills in particular, so let's jump into it. First of all, we've got Forbidden Rite. Forbidden Rite deals chaos damage to the enemy, but also deals maximum energy shield to you equal to 5% of your max energy shield. Sorry, it deals 5% of your max energy shield as base chaos damage, so getting a bunch of energy shield is really, really strong. But then it deals 12% of your maximum life to you as base chaos damage. So something like this is going to be obviously extremely strong on a low life Chevron's Wrappings character, where you really don't have a lot of life, but you have a ton of energy shield. Now you take 40% of max life and 20% of max energy shield as chaos damage. Sorry, that's what I was meaning there. So you take your maximum energy shield as chaos damage as you use this ability. So getting a lot of chaos resistance right here is going to be very strong. Say, for example, you've got 75% chaos resistance. You're going to be taking, what is that? 7.25% of your maximum energy shield as chaos damage right there. And then, you know, a little bit of life, but you don't have a bunch of life there. It's a projectile skill, it's an AoE skill, it's a chaos skill. When you've got AoE and projectile together in the tags, there are some really, really nasty combos that you can have right there. I think we're going to be seeing some really, really interesting things, potentially with Unleash, whether that bypasses the taking the damage, or whether that actually does do extra damage to you. We'll have to wait and see. But casting the spell damages you, so that basically states to me that if you do Unleash, you're going to take 4 or 5 times the amount of damage that you normally would, so probably not. Anyway, Eye of Winter, this is very kind of Diablo-esque, I would say, as a lot of people have been saying, but Eye of Winter is an Elementalist-inspired skill, fires a projectile out in front of you. You can kind of liken it like a Frost Bolt or something like that, but then it fires shard projectiles in a spiral around that projectile when it goes out and when the projectile ends. Now, modifiers to the number of projectiles only apply to the final spiral when it ends or when it hits a wall or something like that, and they continuously gain damage up to 100% more damage by the time that they dissipate. So this is going to be extremely strong. Now, it's a spell, it's a projectile, and it's cold. I think this is going to be very, very, very nice, coupled with things like Chain. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of crazy clear with Eye of Winter. I don't think the boss damage is going to actually be there, though. We'll have to wait and see if there's anything really interesting with some shotgunning that might happen with this skill. If not, bossing is not going to be good with Eye of Winter. Moving on to Summon Reaper. I think this is probably my favorite skill out of all the skills showcased. I'm very excited about this, but you want 600 minions? No, you don't. You want one massive Reaper minion. You can summon one Reaper. The minion's attacks have a chance to inflict bleeding and more damage with bleeding, and the Reaper causes your non-Reaper minions to deal less damage and have less life. Now, it's not a lot of less damage and less life there, so using extra minions right here is really strong. Now, something that's not located on the skill gem here is the Reaper actually periodically consumes your other minions to grant extra damage and heal itself. Now, I'm seeing that right here, Summon Phantasm is going to be extremely strong with Summon Reaper, potentially socketed in, so you don't have to do any extra casting, you don't have to worry about your other minions, but your Summon Reaper will summon the Phantasms and then consume those Phantasms as it is continuing along and dealing damage. I really, really, really hope that this can, I guess, be in the same ballpark as Spectres and Carrion Golems and things like that. We'll have to wait and see, though. If it is, oh boy, I might even just be league starting with this anyway. It looks absolutely crazy. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about the Templar, our favorite pantsless boy. Now, the Templar's Hierophant, Guardian, and Inquisitor Ascendancy classes inspire these skills. First of all, we've got Mana Bond. Now, Mana Bond obviously is inspired by Hierophant, because it's a mana skill, it's a lightning skill, and as you have seen, it deals some kind of crazy rune damage on the ground, and deals base lightning damage equal to 15% of your missing unreserved mana, and then extra length per 25% of unreserved maximum mana that you have. So this is really, 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 really interesting right here. Now, this means that for the amount of mana that you have left in your pool, you're going to be dealing extra AoE, so you're going to be trying to keep that pool topped up as you're clearing maps, and then you want to sacrifice a bunch of mana, stay on as much low mana as you can to then deal a lot of damage with Mana Bond. So we're going to be seeing some interesting uses, rather probably not left clicking of Arcane Cloak anymore, but potentially using Arcane Cloak in very niche circumstances or boss damage circumstances to sacrifice as much mana as you can with Arcane Cloak, and then hitting with Mana Bond there as well. So Arcane Cloak is going to be doubling up the damage and then giving extra damage with Mana Bond right there. Very, very strong. I think this is going to be a pretty meta skill. Absolution. Now, Absolution is a Guardian skill. They basically said it's a spell version of Dominating Blow. Now, it deals damage in an area, applying a debuff for a short duration, and if a non-unique enemy dies when affected by the debuff, its corpse will be consumed to summon a Sentinel of Absolution for a longer secondary duration, or refresh the duration and life of an existing one. So you can have only a maximum of 3 summon Sentinels of Absolution. However, these Sentinels are going to be dealing a ton of damage. Now, it deals physical damage, but it does convert 50% of physical damage to lightning damage, as well as the minions converting that damage as well. And the Sentinels can also cast a different version of Absolution that doesn't actually summon Sentinels, but still deals physical and lightning damage there as well. It kind of looked like a bit of an auto-bombing skill. This is going to be really, really interesting to see how this actually functions. All right, let's move on to Battle Mage's Cry, the last one that we do have here for the Templar, and this is inspired, of course, by Inquisitor and Battle Mage. Battle Mage's Cry is GGG's new way of trying to get people to use attacks and spells at the same time. I don't know if it's going to work, but we'll have to wait and see. It is a war cry that you can use to basically exert your next attack, and when that attack is used, it casts a linked spell, basically. So it performs a war cry, and it benefits from critical strike chance and attacks to benefit from increased spell damage. And the support means that when you use that attack, the skill will be used and triggered by attacks exerted by Battle Mage's Cry. So I think Firestorm is being Consecrated Path, and then Firestorm is being used in the video. But there's a lot of interesting combinations. I think this is going to be really, really cool. Do I think it's going to blow everything out of the water in terms of its power? I do not believe so. We'll have to wait and see how many nerfs are going to be to actual war cries themselves. I expect we're going to get nerfs to war cries. So let's wait and see for Battle Mage right here. That's basically all I really have to say on the skills themselves. That's a lot of talking, 21-minute video, maybe a little bit longer as I edit the rest of everything in here. But thank you so much for watching, guys. Once again, if you really enjoy this content, hit that button down below. You can jump back through the video. I'm going to put a section for each of the classes, not ascendancies or skills, but classes, so kind of 3 skills per class. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. And until next time, Badger is out.